evening, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion on ChatGPT. My name is Abdulbaqi Badru. I am a technology consultant at the Teaching and Learning Office at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and I will be your host for today. Before I proceed, I would like to give honor to whom it's due: Honorable Vice Chancellor, Deputy Vice Chancellors, Deans, academic leaders, our directors, and all other protocols duly and well observed. As we all know that the fourth industrial revolution is upon us, and we are experiencing a technological revolution never seen before. And one of the latest buzzing artificial intelligence developments is a human-like conversation chatbot, which is known as ChatGPT. Today's panel discussion will focus on the opportunities and the threats we must consider and be aware of as academics, because it is taking a disruptive nature. Well, to do justice to this topic, I have four distinguished panel members who will share their views, knowledge about this topic. And in no particular order, I will start with our guest, panel guest, Dr. Jean Kuwata. As you can see, Dr. Jean Kuwata is a lecturer in the Communication, Media, Learning, and Technology Design program at Teachers College in Columbia University. Dr. Jean's interest spans across artificial intelligence, programming, coding, and he is here to share some of his ideas and knowledge on artificial intelligence, how it works, and also to give us a layman understanding of how ChatGPT works. Next is our very own panel members, starting with Dr. Reginald Govender. Dr. Reginald Govender is a lecturer in the education discipline at UKZN, as you're all aware, and he is into artificial intelligence, also coding, robotics. As you can see, our members are, would I say, experts in these areas, and I'm very excited that they will be able to share some of their knowledge in this. And you will be looking at artificial intelligence and knowledge generation, and also looking at the disruptive nature of AI, such as ChatGPT, to our current education and research space. Next is Dr. Upasana Singh. Dr. Upasana Singh is an academic leader and a senior lecturer in the discipline of Information Systems and Technology at UKZN here. And she has over 15 years of teaching experience where she takes IT-related modules. She has one of our main area of research is also assessment. So today she will be looking at assessment and the disruptive nature of ChatGPT to the current assessment approaches we have. I'm so excited, and I'm really waiting to hear what she's going to say about those. Then next is Mr. Melikhaya Noqamza. Mr. Melikhaya is an instructional designer in the Teaching and Learning Office. His areas or his interest is more into technology education, using EduTech to enhance our learning experience. And he also looks at, he is someone that is, I would say obsessed, because I have worked with him. He's obsessed with artificial intelligence. He's always speaking about it, and I'm really excited he would be able to share some of his ideas on AI and learning design with us, and also looking at some of the current application of AI, with regards to our curriculum development. So, well, just to give you a bit of the structure of how today's program would go, firstly, we'd have 10 minutes presentation by each of the panel members, right? And then we then have an open, panel conversation where we would talk more about the current trends to understand, where we sit or our position with regards to the current disruptive nature of ChatGPT. Then we would open up the floor to the audience to engage with our panel members, ask questions, and also there will be a poll which we would require you to complete, just for us to have, another, will I say, open-ended understanding of your position as academics at UKZN. A bit of house rules. Well, while we engage, I would like us to use our Zoom functionalities, effectively. So if you have chats, comments when we are having our conversation, please use the chat icon, right, to ensure that we capture your comments and reactions properly. And then while we are having the engagement, when we have the audience engagements, please use the raise hand button. Once you click that, I would be notified that you want to speak, and then I can give you the floor to speak. And then, but if you have questions that you want the panel members to address, please use the Q&A icon. That would allow us to know that this is a question for us to address. So just because I don't want to assume that everyone here already knows what ChatGPT is, or if you've used it before, I'll just give you a very brief, explanation of what it is and some of the facts on ChatGPT. So firstly, I know people keep saying, what is ChatGPT? It is a chat generative pre-trained transformer, and this is an artificial intelligence text generator that was released by OpenAI in November 2022, just a few months ago. So the question, I can see you say, I put up there, what can ChatGPT do? I am telling you that we are getting to the stage where it is not about what can it do, but what can't it do. But just some of what it can do, it can automate simple tasks and even workflows. It can automate these workflows for you. It can write computer codes. So it means that even the very, we call them special skilled programmers, things are getting to change for them too, because now you can use ChatGPT to write your codes, even write an application. So, that is scary. It can even translate text, from one language to another language. So I believe you'll be wondering now, okay, what more can it do? I will show you a very short clip of how some people are using ChatGPT.
Here's how you can write a tailored cover letter and CV for every single position you apply to in under 2 minutes. Copy and paste the entire job description of the job you're trying to apply for into ChatGPT and ask it to write for you a cover letter for that position. It's going to go ahead and write you a very generic cover letter that's tailored to that position, which is fine because we're going to change it later. Once it's done, ask it to incorporate your own personal experience into the cover letter. And how you're going to do this is that you're going to head over to your LinkedIn, copy and paste your entire experience back into ChatGPT and ask it to incorporate your experience in the cover letter. You're going to see it start to do this right over here. So you can see ChatGPT is incorporating my exact years of experience and my expertise into my cover letter, which is perfect. And it does go deep into the details of the companies you've worked for. It makes up your responsibility sometimes, which is perfect. Then now we're going to ask it to write you a CV to go along with that cover letter. And now all you have to do is to copy and paste whatever it has written for you, do some minor edits, and you're ready and set to apply for that job. And that took under 2 minutes. Follow me for other job hunting hacks.
Well, I don't know what that means to you, but it is disruptive and things are really going to change. So just looking at that is in the HR domain, and you can imagine how it is going to affect us in the academia. So well, see, some of the facts that we've also been able to identify is that it was created by OpenAI, right, and which was co-funded by Elon Musk. Elon Musk is becoming a disruptive man. Well, we already know that. So he's always involved in things like this. The data, if you look at the data that they have over 300 billion words. That is the back end of this system with 570 gigabyte data. And if you look at the parameters, it's huge, 175 billion parameters. And that is more of the reason why you can get almost anything out of ChatGPT. Looking at the funding, Microsoft actually just invested $10 billion in this application, just for you to see, it tells you how valuable this application. And it's currently worth 25 billion US dollars. Wow. That is massive, my people. It's really massive. So then look at they have created another well, I call it, it's an advanced part of ChatGPT, which is called ChatGPT Plus, which allows, people to pay where you have to, it's a subscription, but you have, elevated access. You wouldn't have issues with peak period. Then we have alternatives. I'm telling you, big techs are already jumping on this type of technology. Google has the Bard, which they also deployed recently. And there is so much. When I did research, I was shocked to see that, okay, there were some other similar AI applications that existed. However, ChatGPT became popular because it was open and free for everyone. Well, I'm not surprised because it is open. It surpassed the current, record with regards to meeting up 1 million users, 1 million users a milestone. It got 1 million users in 5 days, while you had other top tech services such as Netflix, Dropbox, they had to take, it took them years and months in order to be able to meet the same milestone. So with these, I think this is really massive, and I would see what our panel members have to say about it. If you look at the fascinating headlines that are currently buzzing out there, students are passing their exams with ChatGPT. ChatGPT is able to pass a law and business school exam. That is threatening. That is crazy. ChatGPT passed a US medical license exam. That is interesting. And I'm telling you, Elon Musk doesn't mind. He says that, don't worry, you are all screaming, but everything is going to be fine. So it means we have to react to it by either adopting it, working around it, or I don't know if you want to resist this technology, but the fact is it is open and our students are going to have access to it. What are we going to do about it? So, and with that, I would move on to our next segment, which is the 10 minutes presentation by our panel members. And firstly, I have Dr. Jean. So he will be taking us on artificial intelligence, the basics, and letting us to know, okay, this is how ChatGPT works. Thank you very much, Dr. Jean. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel discussion. I think this is an incredibly fascinating phenomenon. And I think it's going to be interesting to take a little bit of a journey together to think about what this means for us and to take a couple steps back to think about where have we come from and where are we going to go. So let me get my screen share started. And hopefully you can all see my screen now. Please let me know if you cannot. The title of my little presentation, Artificial Intelligence, Don't Panic, a brief overview and how to think about AI. You might notice already, like in this beginning slide here, that we have a classical robot from the Doctor Who series, a Dalek, whose 2 lines are always exterminate, exterminate, pointing a little red laser at my head. And, already, right, in every conversation I've read into, people talk about AI and ChatGPT as these disruptive or maybe even destructive types of forces. And we're kind of in this weird place right now. We're trying to make sense of, these technologies that are jumping ahead of our ability to see what are some of the constraints and perils. But at the same time, I think it's equally important to think about what are some of the opportunities that we have. And so, you could look at this as a laser kind of guiding to my forehead, but maybe artificial intelligence has figured out through the algorithm that it's trying to help me by, for example, hiding the little bit of a bald, shiny spot on my head, much like a photo filter AI would do. So let's take a look at this from the history of it a little bit, very high overview, and then walk our way through to see where we are with ChatGPT today. So when we think about it today, we're going to talk a little bit about the artificial intelligence. What is it? We're going to talk about how does AI work, right? We're going to talk about then what about ChatGPT? There's going to be a little bit of a few moments later where some of the other esteemed panelists will be speaking about their take on this, but then we'll come back and I'll kind of talk a little bit about some current trends in AI and learning domain that I've been hearing about from colleagues and researchers. And I think it's really fascinating what's going on. So Markov chains, neural networks, we're not going to go that deep. We're going to kind of take a step back and think about this from a more basic sense. So what is AI? Right? When we think about artificial intelligence, we're often thinking about science fiction, future, robots that can act like human beings and talk like human beings and do all the things human beings can do, general AI. But we're not really quite there yet. In fact, researchers aren't really sure if we'll really ever get there in our lifetime. What we're really talking about is something called narrow AI, AI that is good at very specific tasks and quite limited in what it can do, even if what the limit is astounding to us and really like gripping. And so what I want to say with this slide is there is this kind of distinction I want to make. When I talk about AI, I'm really talking about software that learns. And what we mean by that is usually when we write software, it's very deterministic. We give it rules and the software follows those rules. But with AI, researchers have kind of worked with this idea of what happens if the computer writes its own rules, given parameters, given challenges, given feedback and prompts. Can it come up with its own rules to kind of make sense of the world around us? So like a human, yeah, that's kind of one of the criteria, but there are many branches of AI and we're going to follow kind of one narrow set. And so this is, a typical kind of example I might use to kind of introduce people to AI. I might say, dear AI, write me a poem. And the AI says something like, Gusiksil papu, sukuju, mama shuoi, gusu bi pipu, right? And to us, we're thinking that's not a poem, but is it? When we think about this and we take a look at other kinds of poetry, for example, Japanese haiku, the earth shakes just enough to remind us. There is a pattern here of 5 syllables, 7 syllable, 5 syllable. We might never have been able to see that out of this gibberish nonsense that's coming up, but AI, if it kind of runs into that and starts suspecting through random trial and error, maybe I'll give this a try, and humans respond to that in a positive way, it's thinking, I might be a haiku master and give us something like this. But clearly there are other aspects and qualities of this that to us aren't quite poem, but to an AI can see it. And this is partly the weirdness of AI, but also the fascination, the ability to see things we cannot see, right? So how does it come up with weird stuff like this and potentially give us a lot of insights? Well, maybe you guys have heard of the analogy of if you have 1,000 monkeys or maybe 1,000,000 monkeys, I guess it doesn't really matter how many monkeys you have, but you put them in a room and they all have typewriters and they're all punching away at numbers and letters and things of that nature. Well, as the kind of story goes, eventually, maybe after 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000,000 years, you will get the full works of William Shakespeare. And there's an interesting kind of analogy to this, right? The idea of monkeys typing away at a typewriter is really this idea that, they are randomly picking and pecking at certain things. But at some point, this randomness will hit on something. Maybe it's a combination of words. Maybe it's a word itself. Ooh, this is something humans really like, this word. Maybe it's something like, oh, I noticed something about syllables and patterns there, from which then it kind of reinforces itself and says, that's a rule I'm going to use to generate a poem. And so AI kind of started from there, and you can probably guess by now, ChatGPT has come a long ways from those kind of very basic, random trial and error reinforcement types of things to come up with more connections, right? More context, more layers. And there's many different techniques that are going on, but this is the principle kind of behind this idea of machine learning. We're basically training algorithms, right? That recognize patterns and data. And there's different ways we can do that. We can give the computer a lot of exemplars, right? Supervise it by here, this is what you're aiming for. Oh, this doesn't look anything like this image. Or unsupervised, we can give it rules that it has to kind of follow, and then we just let it go. Yeah, just keep trying until you find something that hits the solution. And of course, there's reinforcement, right? Where we can actually have kind of a relationship with it, where it's producing things and we're checking it and telling it, yeah, this is good, this is not so good. And through those kinds of interactions, it's coming up with these rules, these algorithms. And we do this so that it can make predictions, decisions. Once it's kind of found that magic formula, that's the learned algorithm and what we call the model by which it's coming up with these things. So ChatGPT, right, fast forward many, many years, it's an advanced version of this, right? And it'll probably even get better. But how does it work? It's kind of simple when you think about it. All it does is kind of listen to you and you talk to it. You give it some instructions and examples. We're going to call those prompts. It breaks those prompts into words. We call them tokens. And then it passes those tokens into this mystery model, the one that we were talking about, these algorithms, right, that detect patterns. And using those models, it then returns a response, which we're going to call completions, right, from ChatGPT. And so through this process, right, you can imagine for ChatGPT to be able to create a CV like was shown, it's already made a lot of kind of rules in its head, right, its proverbial head, to come up with those kinds of responses. So, here's an example of what ChatGPT, right, might do. Create a poem. A poem could be about JavaScript functions. It could rhyme. The nature of the poem should be about syntax patterns and functions map. And this is the kind of response that it can come to. In the world of coding, there's a thing called a function. It's a set of instructions with a specific junction. And it's the backbone of any program you write, and without it, the code won't take flight. And that's pretty good. But from a learning perspective, is that enough, right? I really want this to be specific about teaching code. So let's take an example like let x equal 100, make a poem that describes the concepts involved in detailing and describing initialization. And it comes up with something better. From nothingness comes a brand new space, a space for a value to take its place. It's kind of getting there, but again, we need to start shaping what this kind of feels like and looks like. So make the poem shorter, focus on the structure and anatomy of the vocabulary involved. I give it examples like a teacher might say this about this concept. A teacher might say that. And before you know it, a keyword to declare lets variables take a dare, and X is the name we choose, a reference we can't refuse. And when you read through this, it's a pretty good constrained poem that talks a lot about the different kinds of things I want. So one of the main things I really want to raise with this is this idea that, look, ChatGPT is pretty smart, but I'm not so convinced that, it's the end all for human beings. It's still going to require a lot of domain knowledge in order to be able to produce really good responses. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity in exploring this with our learners, with students, to inquire, to gain deeper understanding, to try to fool ChatGPT into doing something, because the very skills it takes, the very understanding it takes to be able to be proficient at something are probably the same ones we're going to need to be able to use ChatGPT effectively in the kinds of things we want to engage in. And there are many, many different ways that we can kind of work with ChatGPT. We can illustrate thought process, create a checklist for me. We can organize and re-represent ideas. Give me a flow diagram of how you would solve this problem. You could go into things like testing your own knowledge. ChatGPT, I want to see if I understand this. Give me a problem, I'll explain it, then you critique me. There are other things like argumentation to understand, which is classic from the problem-solving literature. You can have fights with ChatGPT to try to out-logic it, and then try to start to see where the weaknesses of your arguments are. Things like resume writing, coming back to, and this is where I'm going to finish. This is a conversation I had with one of my students where they were very smart and very capable, but their resume was a little bit waning. And so in my relationship with my student, I wanted to use ChatGPT as a way to help her see the kind of deep structures that lead to what is good resume writing and what is not. And so this is where I think the role of the teacher might shift, or how we have to rethink what opportunity is and where we support and guide. I don't really necessarily see ChatGPT as a tool that is something that finishes a task for us, but I see it as almost a co-conspirator in the process of learning, right? Hey, try thinking about the process called PAR, problem, action, result. Give it rules to ask you more questions so it can help you figure out the problem. Ask ChatGPT the reasons why before they write the way they do, right? Question ChatGPT's thought process. Have ChatGPT analyze your thought process and give it comparisons, right? These are all kinds of tips I'm giving them to interact with ChatGPT in a certain way, but these questions and prompts I'm giving the student to ask do two things, right? One, they require a little bit of domain knowledge of writing itself. You can't ask ChatGPT something or give a prompt if you don't know what to ask for it, and the depth of which you can actually investigate and ask requires understanding. I don't think that really goes away, right? So maybe we need to think about this in a slightly different way. This idea that we want to shift away from learning from and go more towards learning to. And I think for that, that my 10 minutes is up. And this is the sign that I need to move on to the next speaker. But I hope that gives you some food for thought.
Wow. Thank you so much. I know we gave you a very small window for you to explain a whole lot about, artificial intelligence and, how ChatGPT works. But I'm telling you, you covered so much, and I believe the audience kind of understand, how things work in that space currently. But I think we need to give you more time to come and explain some more, concepts, just so we can have a proper understanding of what is happening in there. Thank you so much, Jean. So I will be moving on to the next presenter, and that is Dr. Reginald. Dr. Reginald would take us on artificial intelligence and knowledge creation and its disruptive nature to, research and our educational space. Thank you, Dr. Reginald. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Badru, for that. The topic that I'm covering is this knowledge or generation of knowledge, and the disruptive nature of ChatGPT, or let's put it this way, AI in general. So, one of the things that before I can even start my presentation, I just want to look at the generation of knowledge, and an informal definition of knowledge would be maybe a result of some act of curiosity, maybe some sort of innovation, or process of creation, or creating something that could lead to generation of knowledge. And when we look at the disruptive nature, and let's park the AI on the side and look at non-tech disruptions that took place in the past few years. We look at the pandemic. We've overcome that. The severe weather that we've been having in KZN, that maybe even forced some institutions to close down for a few days. We kind of overcome that as well, and we've got the strikes and the protesting and stuff, which disturbs the academic side, and our academic business of producing knowledge. Because remember, at a university or higher education institution, what we want to do is that we want to be kind of producers of knowledge, and that leads to my next slide. Badru, can you just confirm whether you are seeing my?
I can see a slide, but there's this, I don't know, it keeps moving around, but I guess it's your Zoom. Maybe it needs to be updated. But yeah, but I don't think.
So sorry, Badru. So what that usually is if you have either the chat window open in front, like if you have any window open in that space, that could be what's blocking. So it's supposed to be visible.
Let me just reshare my screen quickly, because I just got my laptop back from repairs. So let me just do this again quickly.
I hope AI is not playing with you here.
Yeah, I think AI has taken over this machine. I don't have any other window, but is there a something is blocking?
Yeah, I think we just have to manage.
Okay, it's fine. Yeah. I'll just talk as we go on home. So, coming back to knowledge, I'm looking at Lundvall and Johnson, and Lundvall and Johnson, they talk about knowledge being a crucial resource, and learning, is the most important process. And they talk about 4 categories of knowledge: the know what, know why, know how, and know who. So the second one is quite important to us, because the know why is understanding the rules and functioning, in nature, society. It's the scientific knowledge about rules and accuracy of phenomena that's produced, at institutions like universities, colleges, etc. So I then come to this 2 questions. When was the word computer first used? And the word computer was first used somewhere in the 1600s. And it appeared in a book called The Young Man's Gleanings, where it was referred to a human being who was performing some sort of calculation. So I would say, hey, Badru, you're a computer, and it was most probably taken as a compliment at that time. Until the 19th century, when the whole industrial revolution, and we have mechanical machines coming into the into society, which changed the way we do our daily work. By the way, I've got QR codes, which I'm sure that you might not be able to see them because of my Zoom, but yeah. And then what was the first automatic computing machine? And this goes all the way back to Charles Babbage and his different engine, which was like a massive computer, an automatic computer that was in a room, which did some sort of processing, etc. So coming back to AI, and it was important for me to show you that a little bit background of computers and where we've come from, because obviously AI is, and over the time period, we've seen some sort of a revolution in computing, in the field of computing, and computers that were size of rooms. Now we've got a cell phone, a smartphone, which is regarded as a computer that fits in your hand, right? So I've been following my news feeds from last year, and I've been seeing these news articles popping up, and some of them were disturbing. Some of them were like, okay, it's just one of these things. It's not a big thing, so let's not make a fuss of it. But some of the feeds that I've been seeing was like, top French university bans ChatGPT, from the students using ChatGPT, and we've got is ChatGPT plagiarism free? And those are the aspects that causes the type of disruption at university, at what we do, in the education sector. So I want to look at AI and research output. And before I just go into this and maybe even do an example with you, is that I know Prof. Jean spoke about machine learning, and machine learning is kind of a subset. It's a subset of AI, which is artificial intelligence. And if you've come across artificial intelligence, a neural network, and what it does is that it tries to imitate the human brain, right? Try to do some sort of analysis and provide some sort of imitation of a human response to that. So this was quite interesting, the SciGen, and if you can see the address, the web address, you can take it down. The QR code, if you can manage to see that, you can take a snap of that. But what this website does is that it was built by or created by three researchers at MIT, and what they did was that they wanted to test and expose the lack of scrutiny of submission to conferences. And what this platform did was that it allowed you to enter your author, title, what your research is about, and once you click submit, it would have generated a paper for you, which you could have submitted into a conferences. So, and this was done somewhere in 2005, by the way, right? So AI has been around for some time. And then, looking at some of the headlines on Nature, and this was in 2021, we still have, gibberish or nonsense papers that are still lurking out in publication, in fields. So it's quite scary. But there's also been like over 200 retractions of these papers. So we're getting there, right? And I think
Hi, Reggie. We can hear you.
Was try and figure out.
Sorry, Reggie, we couldn't hear you when, I think you just need to start from when you move to the slide.
Oh, sorry, Badru, I think my internet is unstable on my side as well. Sorry about that. So let me just, I'm not sure how much you managed to get.
You can start from the next slide. The next slide is fine.
This one.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So finding an easy way out, and looking at all the previous the SciGen and the papers that have been generated, and we look at ChatGPT in a more practical sense here, where we looked at Turnitin, and Turnitin, it's reported that Turnitin does pick up some form of text that's generated from ChatGPT. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm just going to quickly do a quick demonstration. Let me just stop my share and let me go onto the web quickly. Okay, so I'm here at the OpenAI on the Playground platform, and what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to one of my papers, right? I don't want to use somebody else's paper. I'm just going to go to any paragraph that's here. Let's go to this paragraph here. And I'm going to copy that text and I'm going to go into the Playground, right? And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to paste that text in there. And I'm going to say, summarize the following into 4 points for me, right? And I'm going to leave the Da Vinci. That's the model that ChatGPT is built off. And there's a lot of other settings that's here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll. Let me just move this. Yeah, and I'm going to click on submit. Submit that appears at the bottom here, right? Okay, I'm getting a server. I think it's my internet connection. Let me just try that again. Okay, and there we have it. It's producing 4 summary points for me based on that text. And you then ask yourself, okay, so if this has to get into the hands of students, what's going to happen next? So the good news is that there have been quite a few plagiarism checkers, right? So we must be able to, that will be able to identify or detect text that's generated from artificial intelligence tools such as ChatGPT. So if I've just take that text out, I'll copy that and I'll go on to this this website called gpt0.me, and I just paste that text in there, and I'll just scroll down. We'll accept the terms of service. Let's do that again. And I click on get results. It gives me a brief rundown and gives me a result that, you know what, the text is likely to be written entirely by an AI, right? And it gives me some stats, etc., which you can play around with. So, and you can look at it. So, although this ChatGPT is out there and everyone is concerned about it, there are tools that would allow you to check whether the text that's produced in an assignment, whether it is produced by AI. So I then look at true intelligence. And remember, AI has been around for years. It's in the making and it's been evolving over the years. So in 1987, for those of you that... Yes, Badru?
30 minutes left.
Okay, thank you for that, Badru. So quickly, you know, if those of you that remember IBM's Deep Blue, that was a chess algorithm that actually beat human, right? It actually beat Gary Kasparov, and years later we had IBM Watson, which beat 2 winners of Jeopardy. So Jeopardy is a kind of a quiz game, and not forgetting Sophia. Sophia was the humanoid, which was developed by Anstek in 2016. And she was actually given citizenship at Saudi Arabia, right? And we then look at what, the development of AI over these years, and we ask ourselves, do we see a degeneration or a slowdown of cognitive processes in mankind? And do we see AI overtaking, human beings? Let's put it that way, in the thinking power. So knowledge preservation quickly is that, you want to be able to differentiate between authentic, something being authentic human knowledge and something that's being emulated by some sort of bot. And one of the things that AIs lack is personal experience or the ability to perform some sort of reflection. And we look at Dewey in 1933 when he says that we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. So the next, the big question is that how do you measure human emotions through a text response? Human emotion can be measured maybe through pupil dilation, your ECG, or brain activity, etc. But what about in a text response? How do you measure that? And when we look at GPT-0, it's an example of using AI again to try and detect AI. That's what it is. So, and I know my colleagues are going to touch more on this later on, but I think maybe for the embracing the destructive nature of AI, policy is important. It'll be important for us to, let our students know that we know about AI and what it does. Try to integrate AI tools like ChatGPT into our coursework. And then also in terms of assessment, and I know the next panel member is going to be talking more about this, would be to try and integrate personal experience and reflections in that. And I'm going to end there. Thank you, Badru.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that interesting presentation. Oh, wow, it's quite interesting to see where, how we started, where we currently are, and where we're going. And then also, I think it's scary to know that there are AI-generated papers still out there. So definitely some people are, they are publishing gibberish just because they are using the same AI-generated research papers in their own research paper. Wow, okay. Thank you so much for bringing this up. I will be moving on to the next panel member, and that is Dr. Upasana Singh. Dr. Upasana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Badru. Good morning, everyone, and good morning to my esteemed colleagues. Our presentations thus far have been very enlightening. Thank you for sharing your insights. And a lot has already been touched on by our previous presenters, some of the very exciting examples given by Dr. Jin in his presentations on how ChatGPT can be used for assessments. So I'm no expert in the area. I think we're all still learning about ChatGPT and how we can embrace it in our own teaching and assessment. Why this hype about ChatGPT? Artificial intelligence in education has been around for a long time. We know that there's been many types of AI tools which are available for staff to use in education, for students to use to access information. The whole objective, I think, for us as educators is to prepare our students for the future, to prepare them for the world in which they are meant to be going out into for working purposes, for living purposes, for socialization purposes. So if we're going to hide away from artificial intelligence, we're not actually preparing them for a future which is filled with all types of artificially intelligent tools. The focus on artificial intelligence these days, or since the beginning of this year, has been on just one tool, which is ChatGPT, which is that buzzy chatbot which has been developed, which is capable of writing these essays, solving your problems, your maths problems, your science problems, and also producing the computer code, as has been spoken about previously. So what is the fear? Firstly, we're always fearful of things which are new. So ChatGPT is new. It has sent many educators into a form of panic. Students are now using it to write their assignments through these artificially intelligent generated essays, as has been demonstrated. And so the immediate fear which we all face is the focus on cheating and potentially misleading answers. Furthermore, ChatGPT has totally disrupted the way in which we are going to be delivering education. And as one educator asked, are we even necessary now? ChatGPT has the ability to evaluate student submissions, and this has been tried by an academic overseas. And in his statement about the experience which he had, he said that the evaluation of these student papers was much faster. It provided more detailed feedback in the fraction of the time that it would have taken him to assess those particular papers. So we can see that the disruption can be positive. It can also assist us as educators. It's about how we embrace this new environment in which artificial intelligence is brought into the education system. So the big question is, do we ban it or do we embrace it? And there have been many institutions, many schools overseas, some even locally, which are banning the use of ChatGPT, while there are others who are embracing it. In my personal opinion, and these are just my own personal views, is that we need to embrace ChatGPT, but thoughtfully. It can be used as both a teaching aid and an assessment tool. We always speak about students, giving students the opportunity to engage, giving students the ability to be creative. And if we now embrace this artificial intelligence, we are going to be able to unlock student creativity, and I will give you some examples later. We also know that students come back to us repeatedly for certain concepts which they didn't understand in the classroom. And through the use of ChatGPT, students can now find a personalized tutoring service so that they can study those concepts using multiple views of those particular concepts, or presenting multiple views of those particular concepts, and finding a way in which they can learn better about the concepts which are being taught. And finally, as I've alluded to previously, by embracing ChatGPT and other artificially intelligent tools, we're going to better prepare our students for the workforce in which they are going into, where they have to work with artificially intelligent systems. So we can block, ChatGPT on our university websites, on our university networks. But how do we actually control students or limit them from using these type of artificially intelligent tools on their personal phones, on their laptops? And one academic even asked ChatGPT about what are the ways in which we can prevent students from using ChatGPT, and the response that the academic got was there are 5 different ways, or the ChatGPT provided 5 different ways in which students can still work around the blockages which the universities or the institutions put on the use of ChatGPT, including the use of a VPN to disguise the students' web traffic itself. So I don't think we're ever going to be able to ban it completely. What is our focus as educators? Are we worried about whether our students are cheating, or should we be focused on designing assessments which are going to give students the best ability to use these tools, but to unlock their potential in terms of who they are as students? Do we want to spend more effort in policing students, or do we want to spend more effort in designing the right types of assessment for our students? Should we be treating ChatGPT as we treat calculators or scientific calculators? Should we allow students to use them for certain assignments, but not for others? Do we assume that unless students are being supervised in person, so in other words, unless we are having controlled assessments where their devices are taken away, that students are actually using these tools without our knowledge? So these are some of the types of questions which we need to ask ourselves when we are looking at how we're going to be embracing ChatGPT in our teaching and our assessment. So here's an example of a high school teacher overseas who assigned students in one of her classes, and this was in an English class, to create outlines for their essays. And these outlines needed to compare and to contrast two 19th century short stories. So ChatGPT was used to generate these outlines. And after the outlines were then generated, students were asked to put their technology away, their laptops away, and they had to write their own essays. They had to present their own written essays. What she found through this process was that the process had not only deepened students' understanding of the stories which they needed to compare and contrast, it also taught them about the methods to interact with these artificial intelligent models. They had to understand how to produce an outline, firstly, about 3 different types of items. They also had to think about it very carefully. They had to evaluate it. And if they didn't get the results that they wanted, they could always revise it. Okay, then we have some points on how ChatGPT can help with personalizing lesson plans for each student. So we talk about students having their own learning path when they come to us. ChatGPT can help to develop this learning path for the students. It can serve as an after-hours tutor. We've already spoken about that. It can also work as a debate sparker for students to deepen their knowledge. And so it can generate questions for them to dig deeper into the content in which we are teaching them. It can also be used as a starting point for in-class exercises. So you could get your students to read about a particular concept or to ask ChatGPT about a particular concept, and then start a discussion, a class discussion about it, about that, what ChatGPT generated for them. And it can also be a learning tool for students who are not English first language speakers to improve their basic writing skills. So we often speak about academic writing being a problem in the university environment, and ChatGPT can help with improving that academic writing. Okay. Then we have an example of how ChatGPT can also be used to generate quick quizzes. One of the educators fed the bot with an article about Ukraine and asked it to generate 10 multiple choice questions, which could be used to test students' understanding of the article. What he found was that out of the 10 questions which are generated, 6 were actually usable. So it can save us a lot of time in our lecture preparation and in the assessment preparation. However, we should be pairing it, and we always speak about technology as the medium that we use to teach our students or to assess our students. So the technology itself should not replace you, but rather pair the technology with substantive in-class discussions. And so as this particular educator went on to state that any tool that lets students refine their thinking before they come to class and to practice their ideas is only going to make the education process a lot better. So in conclusion, today's students will definitely graduate into a different world from when we graduated, with lots of AI programs, with a lot of AI tools available. We need to prepare them for these tools. And by allowing them to embrace these types of tools like ChatGPT, they're embracing artificial intelligence, they're understanding the strengths of these tools, the weaknesses of the tools, what are some of the hallmarks, what are some of the blind spots in these tools itself. It also helps to prepare them to become good digital citizens in terms of how they engage and interact with technology. Through this hands-on experience, what types of biases these types of tools contain and how it can be misused so that they also are aware of the pitfalls of using these types of tools, and at how it can be weaponized to embrace and increase their understanding. Okay, so I think I will stop there, Badru, because my time is probably over. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. This is one of the, will I say, most positive like say speech or presentation that I've heard about ChatGPT when it comes to the education or academia. See, it's quite interesting to see that we need to, when it comes to these current adoption phase, there needs to be a paradigm shift from our normal assessments, our traditional assessments. However, are we ready for this? And then also, as educators, we need to embrace this to, to become more creative and see how we can use it in our teaching and learning. Thank you so much for that. So I will be moving on to the next presenter, and that is Mr. Melikhaya. Mr. Melikhaya, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Into it. My name is Melikhaya Noqamza. I am the instructional designer for the College of Humanities. So the other panelists have spoken about how AI works, and obviously we had that in expectancy. So just a brief overview. We know that AI can calculate and select specific items from a database. It also has the ability to evaluate and select specific items, and it can also curate and select specific items. And I've obviously got a list of apps that use this AI technology for the specific function. But what we are looking at today is how AI can create. And that is the disruptive element of AI at this moment in time. So what we have been using in AI predominantly are discriminative models, or at least discriminative applications of AI, where AI can discriminate between specific tokens or specific data sets, or just specific data points, right? So with Grammarly, it can discriminate between bad grammar, bad spelling, good spelling, your intent in your writing, and so forth. And then we have an app like WordTune, where you can paraphrase your text. So as opposed to asking it to rewrite or to write a summary, for example, you can copy somebody's essay and simply ask it to rewrite the entire thing. That's also AI within itself, and that's still within the text-to-text subfield. Then we move on to the generative aspect of text-to-text, and this is where we start looking at apps like ChatGPT and any other apps that sort of derive from that model itself, including GitHub's Copilot, which helps people to code. So from natural language text, you can develop a script, and you can do that with ChatGPT, but this is definitely more in line with coders, also predictive sort of model on the code, allowing a person to just auto-complete their code. So I just want to briefly go through some other applications of this model. Got text to audio, which is MuseNet. It allows you to describe music and it will simply output it. Got audio to audio, which are voice mods. This helps you to enhance your voice. This could be used in presentations, could be used in webinars and so forth. Then we have text to image, DALL-E, where if you don't know how to design, for example, you can simply input a text and an image will come out. And we have image to image, where you can upload a profile picture of yourself and it will come out as something sort of fantastic, something more sort of like nonfiction in the style of your favorite Disney character, for example. Then we have text to video. So why I'm going down through all of this is to simply show that AI is taking over all of the interactions that we do with a computer as humans. I mean, we either text on a computer, for example, we either write content, we do research, or we're creating music, or we're creating video, and so forth. So we've got Synthesia, where you can describe a video that you want, and Synthesia will simply create it for you. And then we have Tome. What Tome is basically you can describe a presentation that you want, or an idea of a presentation, as it just did here, where it described an idea for CloudHop, and they want a presentation for it, and it'll simply pop out a presentation for you. So I'll just pop this link in the chat, just because I'm an affiliate, so it'll help. But either way, it's free, and the only way, in a sense, that you get more credits from here to create more presentations is by spreading the word. So they've got a referral model, in a sense, to just get people on board. But this is taking the uses of ChatGPT and putting them into a practical sense, because otherwise you have to go and copy and paste content, or you have to use an image generating app for you to create the video or to create the images themselves. Here you have everything in the same place. So this is definitely something that is way more useful for lecturers, for example. So we move on. Here we just go through the fact that it's a large data set, which is passed through a machine learning algorithm, and that then becomes a neural network. It's still questioning itself. It's still spitting out funny poems like Dr. Jin and Tonic stated earlier. And then we have deep learning models. So in a sense, we just keep on carving out and sort of creating parameters and creating guides so that it's narrower and narrower and narrower until we get to something like ChatGPT 3 and ChatGPT 3.5 that everybody simply loves. And all the way through this process, what it is really is just allowing the database to talk back to whoever is requesting certain content. Generally on Google, when you request something, you're still requesting it from a database, much like an Excel sheet. So when you're requesting a field or a value from an Excel sheet, it doesn't necessarily talk back to you. It just spits out that detail. But here, the actual models themselves have been created so that they can talk back to you and they can talk within each other. And that's all that really is over there. So these are the base models. From there, we get our secondary models. So in essence, you can fine tune it even more so that it works with specific industries. So it can, and it hasn't right now, there aren't really any secondary models for education, but they can be fine tuned and further fine tuned to create more categories within education. So you could have a fine-tuned model for synchronous and asynchronous assessment and so forth. Then we have AI-first companies. Now, these are companies that take directly from the model and simply just put a UI on top of it and fine-tune it even more for a specific task. For example, ChatGPT uses the GPT model and it's simply just been fine-tuned for a chat function so people can chat with it. Copysmith uses ChatGPT, or at least GPT's model, but it's more fine-tuned towards copywriting. Then we have AI-enhanced organizations. Now, these organizations that will simply use AI to make certain processes better. Power Automate by Microsoft uses AI to test certain text, basically just discriminate between different types of text. So right now, or at least before, you could automate the ability to answer or reply a certain email. But at this point, you can have Power Automate read what is in the email, give you a summary of what the intent of the email is, and tell you whether or not it is a pressing email, and then provide a possible reply for you. So that's what's going on within Power Automate. Office 365, there are a couple of developments because Microsoft owns OpenAI, so there will be developments that are going on. Right now, there aren't that many. But for example, I showed you Tone.ai. If we look at Microsoft PowerPoint, they have this design feature on the side here. So if you create a PowerPoint presentation and you simply type in a title, it'll generate some options here and you can refresh it, but they're not the best, especially if you were to compare them for the same title, something that will be created by Tone. Okay, so we move on, and what we really are interested in is how it will affect universities, learning design, and so forth. It's obvious when you look at Power Automate, Office tools, the ability to have ChatGPT integrated into Bing, things like office automation, admin processes, research, data analytics, things that are within the support staff and aren't necessarily, things that people are getting marks for, but in a sense that just need like human resource, and they need people to do the creative writing, SEO. No one is marking people on these things. So this can be used to, in a sense, augment those tasks. Then we look at students themselves, right? This is where the issue comes in, where how do we ensure that assessments work well? So for me, I've looked at the positive elements, and there's definitely negative elements with regards to how AI can be used. So with academic staff, you could create customized lesson plans. You could automate personalized assessment. Students can use it for research, not plagiarize research, but in a sense, just getting the ball rolling, and you could create outlines. We have our general methods over at the top, and I've separated it into more personalized methods. So the general methods is you would simply go to a lecture and you would get your lesson plans and however it's been distributed, and usually it's distributed by the institution. So now you can obviously, with the AI enhancement, use it to create lesson plans, use it to create auto assessment, use it for research, for webinars, you can use it for presenter guides, for transcription. These are things that are already in existence that you can just simply use to enhance your work as a lecturer. And with regards to more personalized methods, AI has the ability to create small classroom discussion because of curated chat. And there's an AI right now, in a sense, where you can chat with Socrates if you want, right? So as opposed to having Socratic seminars in the not literal sense, you can literally chat to Socrates with regards to taking what ChatGPT does, but making it more curated towards what you want for your students. Now, for the last minute, I did throw in just a couple of examples of what can be done with regards to using AI in the maximal, using AI in the minimal. So you have your AI tool here, ChatGPT, most of it, or at least through the element of creating a lesson plan, all you need would be ChatGPT. So I'll just jump to the most personalized element of it, right? So here you could just ask the students who their favorite musician or comedian is, and then they copy and paste their lesson plan, and then they ask the bot to rewrite the lesson instructions as their hero. For example, the lesson plan can be rewritten as Tony Stark from Iron Man. With regards to a custom lesson plan, you can really just keep on iterating your lesson plan just to literally make it what you want it to be, or you can simply just ask it for a standard one. So this just shows how you can use ChatGPT just to make better engagement, I guess, for your content and the content that you create. Within content creation, you can use tools like Adobe Podcast to enhance the voice and to enhance your voice for presentations. Midjourney, you can use it to create backgrounds, images, badges, stash items, and obviously research. We used to use Google, and now you can, have a little bit more personalized research where you can communicate with the AI. And obviously, where we don't want students to go is the plagiarism aspect. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Melikhaya. I think this is quite interesting to see that AI is in control right now. And I would say AI is everywhere. So I don't see how we can run away from this. We just need to find a way to, adopt this technology. And even from what you've said, I could pick up also that in as much as there are a lot of benefits to these artificial intelligence tools, however, there's the threatening part of it. If you can write a proper computer code using ChatGPT, what does that mean? You can write a virus computer code also using ChatGPT, which is going to cause so much damage, out there. And you could also write propagandas, and it's going to even make such kind of scary things easier to even do now. It means we would have it all around everywhere. But I'll quickly move on to Dr. Jean for his final presentation, where he would just look at current research trends of artificial intelligence in the higher education research space. Dr. Jean, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Yes, so I am back. Really enlightening stuff to hear from my colleagues, the kinds of ways that they are thinking about ChatGPT and AI, the possibilities for learning and such. What are the current trends, right, with AI and learning? And like some mentioned, I think it's still quite new in the sense that AI has been around for a while, but it's kind of gotten to a place now finally where, people who might not have that computer science background, right, understanding the really ins and outs of how these networks and nodes and things work, can actually start interfacing with it, interacting with it. And so, in the conferences and kinds of sessions that I've had with fellow colleagues that are talking about AI and doing things like that, certainly many themes, of interest in research have come up. Writing, critical thinking, analysis, digital literacy. Those are very hot topics, right? The implication of what it means to be able to understand, what is the nature of AI and what does it mean for the kinds of writing that is produced out there, or the kinds of writing I have to consume. Practitioners are quite interested, right, in methods of interacting with ChatGPT and other tools to produce particular kinds of results. And, the state of that is, we're still trying to figure it out, right? Sometimes I get a sense that, in the way we're approaching it, every time we think about a brand new technology, oh my gosh, it's so new. There's so much we don't understand. And that might be true, but there's also a lot of stuff we do understand. When we think about things like, for example, constructivist learning, the idea that we want to make learning meaningful for people, and there are ways that we can situate them to find that meaningfulness, engagement. We can use ideas of collaboration, but the same kinds of patterns I see in that kind of debate too. Well, collaborate. All right, put people into like a Google Doc and they're collaborating. You do this, I do this. Is that really collaboration, or is that just splitting up a task, doing a task through that method of collaboration? When we talk about ChatGPT, we often talk about things like it can do these tasks. And I guess that's one way we can think about it. But like others have been demonstrating, there's different degrees to which people do tasks, right? Make me a story, make me a poem, write me this computer virus code. AI is going to take the shortest path possible to get there. So, the kinds of things that get produced aren't necessarily going to be the greatest things. They will meet those parameters and whatnot. And this, again, I think there's a lot of opportunity. The kind of understanding it takes to write a super world overtaking nefarious virus. At that point, someone probably has a lot of understanding of computer science networks and all that stuff. And I don't even know if they need to use ChatGPT to come up with something there, right? ChatGPT might be able to come up with some interesting insights that then make them think about what do I need to learn next? What do I need to understand? What are connections I don't see? But part of all these tools that we have for learning, right, isn't the whole point, right, to kind of think about not just the outcome, right, but the process. So, it's like, I think we need to, again, thoughtfully go through this. Does it change the way we go about it and the roles we take? Yeah, to some extent, right? But to some extent, I think many of the values that we have about what learning is and what's important, it's like maybe not so important now to remember that, I don't know, Mars is the fourth planet of the sun. And, that's a fact, right? But I could Wikipedia it. And when's the last time you've ever had to use that inert knowledge? So there's a certain level of shifting of where the responsibilities are. And that's kind of tied to the kinds of values we bring into what is learning. Plagiarism and academic honesty is certainly a hot topic. And, and every conference that I've been to, somebody's always talking about that. And I think it's important, right? But more than, the ChatGPT being a vehicle or weapon for plagiarizing, I think there are other questions involved. Like what does it mean, right? Our values in terms of what is original or not, and what is the importance of that? Things like, the adversarial nature in which we're talking about it sometimes also bugs me. For example, in many of the talks that I've been to, I see this kind of, well, students will use it this way, then what can we use to kind of fight that? And then how will they come up with the better weapon? It's kind of like an arms race. I'm not really sure whether that is kind of the healthy way to go about this discussion. I think there's many avenues in which, perils can happen, but also positives. And so thoughtfulness is really important. And, thinking about it in sense of not an adversarial kind of relationship between student and teacher and ChatGPT, but a collaborative one might be beneficial in terms of how we think about research. And for my personal interests, I'm quite interested in ChatGPT and AI as tools of cognitive support. So, when we think about old theories like cognitive apprenticeship, it's like being able to see inside somebody else's mind and get the thought process. Those are things ChatGPT does great with. Of course, those are things and opportunities that students can learn from. Mind tools, right? Tools that we are teaching, because in order to teach a tool, we need to have some kind of understanding. And if the mind tool doesn't do what we want, it makes us inquire and investigate in meaningful ways, right? These teachable agents, relationships we have with these machines, and of course, problem solving. Metacognition is another thing that came up in many of the kinds of things people are talking about. How do we know we know, right? And using ChatGPT or AI to kind of test that understanding and to guide, right? What kinds of strategies should we pick up? Where should we go? To me, that seems like a real positive. So coexisting with this technology and each other, right, is something that I think we need to think about. It's not just the relationship between us and the machine, But through that relationship, I think we need to reconsider our relationships to each other. So I'm going to kind of leave it with one more kind of last thing, which is this idea of, for me, again, I tend to see this in a little bit more of a promising way. And, I do a lot of things with LX designers and trying to help them to understand stuff about the process. And so this last example I'm going to give is this thing that I'm working on right now, where basically, with my team, we were using ChatGPT to kind of define to it a way of thinking about different kinds of learning, outcomes and targets. And, through this process, we were asking really important questions of what does it mean to understand what learning is? How can we articulate it in ways that, ChatGPT or AI can learn from, and then make the kinds of reasonings we think we should be making, or, for example, practice teachers. And it's pretty good, right? Like in terms of coming up not just with responses. On the right-hand side is a kind of example scenario of what a physics classroom might look like, a story. And then when you ask ChatGPT based on the kinds of understandings that the students have come up with and fed, ChatGPT comes up with a response like based on the scenario, it appears that Wyatt's learning problems having difficulty with the outcome of saying and a target of explanations. He's able to recall facts that this helium has an atom of 2, but struggles to understand underlying concepts and connections. And, through looking at this response, students start to question, is this how we want, for example, pre-service teachers to look at phenomenon? Are there other things that we can generate in the scenario to help people to experience things they've never experienced before, to critically look at this concept in different kinds of forms of representations? And through that, they were also learning to become great designers. I think it takes a lot of work for us to know what we need to do and how we need to guide them to get there. But this is just another kind of avenue and opportunity. And I hope, again, that we go thoughtfully through this process, but we also don't prematurely discount it or run away from it. So there we go.
Thank you so much. That's thought-provoking. And I must say that it seems what I'm hearing from all our panel members is that is the way to go. We have to embrace this technology. We can't run away from it because it is everywhere. So how do we then, adapt this into our learning space and deal with the threats that comes with it? Because I think the more we use it, the better we will be in, using this kind of tools. So this takes me to the next segment of our program, which is, we having this conversation. I will be posing some questions to the panel members, of which I want to hear what their views are. So I would like to ask, are you guys, kind of excited about this? And then what could be the potential for learning? I know you've said a lot about, how we can, we need to modify our curriculum or change our assessment methods. But are you excited? Is there any fear around this? Let me pose this to Dr. Jane. So what do you think?
Sure. So, I would say I'm more on the optimistic side than the pessimistic side for this, right? The kind of questions we've had and fears we have with new technologies coming in and, what's it going to do is not a new one, right? We do need to go about it thoughtfully, though. I think there are new kinds of challenges we need to think about. For example, when we go back to that original kind of brief history of how AI works, someone is training it, right? Someone is feeding it, idea and data is about, what patterns should be. And you've probably heard of issues, for example, earlier AI iterations suddenly coming up with very, very hateful speech and things of that nature that might be hurtful. Who has a voice in this, right? And so this becomes a much bigger question, right? In terms of, as we go forward, not just, my community, right? Like my nation. It really becomes an international issue. Like, how do we participate in the process of building these things? But that said, it's like, I think that, there's a lot that we built in terms of understanding how learning works that, when we take a look at ChatGPT, the affordances and constraints, there's certainly new avenues of interesting stuff that can really offload some of the things that learners maybe had to do before, right? And for maybe very little purpose, to more important things, right? To put our efforts into.
Thank you so much. Let me put this to my colleagues at UKZN here. What do you think? Should UKZN be concerned, about this tool? And what do you think the impact? You've talked about research, but how do you think we can, embrace this? Well, because I said initially that I noticed everybody is in the you're all on the positive, lane and not the negative. So how do we then embrace this with regards to research? Dr. Reggie.
Sure, Badru. Yeah, very interesting insights, from colleagues. I think at the end of the day, we got to look at it as, is AI and this ChatGPT that's out, is it disruptive in its nature to education? Or should we see it as an advancement in the education and what we're trying to do? You think of Prof. Google. When Prof. Google came out, everyone was up in arms. Students could type in some questions and they would get an answer. But we've kind of overcome that, and we've embraced that. We talk about disruption in education, and I mentioned in my slides earlier on that there were non-tech disruptions that took place that affected education, and we've overcome that. So I think it's about just embracing it, and also being aware of such tools. I think that's most important. Don't underestimate it, because if you are going to just ignore it, then that's likelihood that you're going to have some problems, maybe in your environment, like in your modules, etc., where you're going to get students trying to take advantage of that. So I think embracing it definitely would be the route to go, and just looking at where it goes, the developments from now, because it's fairly new. People are still talking about it. There are some places that are embracing it. Some places are actually, imposing like sanctions, like really condemning the use of such tools. But I think we should be excited about this type of technology, because from a computer background, when you think about it, it's come a long way, and we see this massive improvement in the way in which this artificial intelligence, something that's not human, that's able to converse with us, and when you see that text appearing on the screen, you say, oh my word, I don't know whether there's somebody there that's busy typing on their computer and talking to me, but we see this massive improvement over the years. So I think definitely it's exciting, and we should definitely look forward to the developments around that going forward. Yeah.
Thanks, Reggie. I think what I picked up from there is, if we mustn't ignore it. If you ignore it, it's even more disruptive, than you have to know that this exists. And that's, I would say, one of the main objective of this panel discussion, because we just don't want to assume that everyone, in the university already knows what ChatGPT is, or they're already using it. I had chats with a colleague yesterday, and I was telling her, I said, have you heard of ChatGPT? She said, no. I said, wow, where are you? Where are you? You need to join tomorrow's panel discussion, because there is an exciting tool out there. I did a screen share to just give her, a demo. Do you know the next thing she said? She said, please, I need that. Give me the link. I need the link. I need to use it. I'm like, you see, so you need to know about this. And let me pose this question to Dr. Singh. Currently, so what is your approach now from now on with regards to your assessments? Because I know this is troubling. It's out there already. What is the fastest route? How do we adapt to this change? Because it requires us to change. How do we adapt to this change? And is this going to affect our development of like our curriculum? And how do we ensure that it doesn't have issues? Quality is really important when it comes to education. Dr. Singh?
Thank you, Badru, for that. Yes, it is going to affect all aspects of our education. just if we look at those of us who have been embracing technology in the teaching process and the assessment process over the past many years, prior to COVID even, like how we embraced social media, we brought social media into the classroom because that is what students were using. Our techno-savvy students are happier using forms of social media to communicate and to engage. In the same way, we have to find ways in which we can bring ChatGPT into the classroom, into the curriculum. Our quality assurance processes also need to adapt in order to cater for aspects like ChatGPT and artificial intelligence tools. So in my opinion, there needs to be a holistic view about how we embrace ChatGPT at your particular institution, because every institution may handle it differently. Also, what we must remember is that ChatGPT wasn't designed as an education tool. So it doesn't take into account the pedagogy of education. And that pedagogy still lies with us as educators. So we need to understand how we're going to adapt it according to the pedagogical approach which suits us in our own classroom. And while Dr. Jin may use it in one manner and Dr. Govender might use it in another manner, I might use a different approach to adopting ChatGPT. So I also feel the continuation of these kind of series, which engage and bring information sharing rather than just talk about what the tool is also important. Sharing of experiences, particularly within UKZN, because we also may have different systems. There might be different blockages in our system compared to how it's adopted internationally, or UCT or UJ, for example. There also needs to be a bit more of an opening up of the use of ChatGPT. So I stand to be corrected, but from what I understand is using your UKZN credentials, you cannot access ChatGPT right now. So this is a good precaution, because if students are doing tests in the laboratories and they're not able to access it using their UKZN credentials, then automatically there's a filter and a blocking of it. But if staff need to experiment with the use of ChatGPT and we want to get students to engage using AI tools in the classroom, then we need to think about ways in which we can remove that block, because we don't want students to then be using their Gmail addresses and then, not being able to engage and not keeping track of their engagement levels. So where is it that we want to go to with ChatGPT at UKZN? And I think the higher decision makers need to make that call.
I think I'm going to go further. Okay, Dr. Jane.
Yes, I wanted to kind of bounce off an idea that Dr. Singh proposed, which I think is a really, really thoughtful one. Like she says, it's going to be different for me and my class and my students as it is going to be for Reggie and it's going to be for somebody else. And in this dialogue, right, like we talk about it in these extremes. Should we ban it or should we embrace it, right? Like a chocolate sundae and just scarf it all down at once. And the truth is probably somewhere in between, right? I think when we first start out with new technologies, we're excited about it, but we're kind of also in this problem finding stage, right? It has these opportunities, but also these constraints. And to some extent, we have ideas of what kinds of learning issues or situation or context it might be good for, but we don't know, right? For example, when VR is like starting to become more like consumer like friendly, everyone was excited about it. Oh, engagement, like VR, virtual reality, super engaging. But I often tell, teachers and stuff like, well, does that mean that, your idea of using VR in the classroom is appropriate? Like, just because we're not using VR, does it mean that learning is not engaging, right? What kinds of problems is VR good for? Like, for example, spatial, temporal kinds of understanding the relationship. For that, maybe that's a really good technology to use. So, we have to investigate this more. And to do that, I think the way is we just have to play. It starts with one little move, and every teacher out there in their own little context, right? In their own little value set, in their own little situated community has to kind of work with it to understand it. And once they understand it, start creatively thinking about what does this mean to me? And what does it mean to my students? And it's from that kind of experience and then that kind of thoughtful discussion that then we can kind of start to ask the next questions and get into more interesting stuff so that then at some point, yeah, we can embrace it for these things. So it's a journey. We're kind of taking the first step. It's exciting, but it should also be tempered with a little bit of consideration as well.
Thank you, Dr. Jane. And yeah, I do agree, because you say, I do tell people, while we're using it, we are also improving the system. We are also training the systems ourselves, because whenever you kind of agree, that, okay, it's asked you that question, is this information useful? Does it kind of tally? Is the answer right? Once you acknowledge that, automatically it takes it in as an appropriate response for the next person coming. So we are also training these systems ourselves. And let me say, from the university, Dr. Singh, because you are one of our leaders here, as academic leader, where do you think this conversation should start? We have started the conversation, but where next? Because do we have to get it into a policy somewhere? Do we have to, where exactly in the structure should we have these proper conversation in order to enable or to either run away from it, or to find a better way to deal with it?
Thanks, Badru. I think at our university, we have a very fairly structured approach to how we deal with any teaching and learning aspects. So I would think that the process needs, or the discussions need to start at the lower level with the academic leaders of teaching and learning, to get a feel of what's happening in their own spaces within their colleges and their schools. That needs to then be communicated through to the college level. And then ultimately, I think that the UTLO should be leading what happens with the processes in terms of how the policies need to be streamlined. Well, suggestion-wise, I'm not saying implementation-wise, but I think suggestion-wise, because we do have a teaching and learning office, which is supposed to be supporting academic-related teaching and learning activities, that's where I think that the discussions should be happening, but obviously the final decisions lie with the decision makers at the institution.
Okay, I do know that when it comes to I say academic integrity, this is ChatGPT will bring in another complex. It makes it more complex now. You turn it in, it doesn't pick up this artificial intelligence text. So does that mean the student is good to go? Do you have to then take it again and then put it into the AI generator or detector to know if this text, which has been bypassed by Turnitin, is also, so I think it's bringing up this complexity in the whole academic integrity space. And I believe, because now you were talking about the way you would use it is different from the way Jean would use it, different from the way Reggie would use it. What does that mean? I feel there's going to be another space in the scholarship of teaching and learning where we all have to then deliberate, about how we are using this and what is the results. I can see you alluding to that. Do you want to say anything about that, Dr. Singh? Are you good? Okay, thanks so much.
No, I was just agreeing with you because, I'm probably overlooked a unit at our institution, which is ICS. And I think that the academic computing is no longer an individual unit now. But the academic computing unit at ICS, or the ICS support unit, needs to play a very important role, because they need to see what types of technology is going to be used to mitigate the cheating that could come from AI tools like ChatGPT. So they need to work closely with the academics, and that's why there needs to be collaboration with people on the ground like the academics who are experimenting with these, so they can feed back into the institutional technology and the institutional processes, because it's not going to be an approach that can be adopted where it's what management says and then what happens at the ground is different, because we're not going to be benefiting the students. So there has to be a collaborative approach to the whole process.
Thank you so much for that. So I think this goes to Melikhaya, because you showed us different applications and showed us, current trends when it comes to that space, in the industry. Now there's Lambda, there's OpenAI. where is this going to, how is it going to impact our lives beyond, academia? Because we all know that it's not only about academia. If you step out of the university, then you would meet more artificial intelligence tools and application. What does this mean?
Thank you, Badru. Yeah, so it's quite a lot. And, what I've seen is that a lot of people either underestimate what's going on or they are too scared of it, right? So people that are too skeptical, who in a sense are worried about their jobs and such and all of that. And there's people who in a sense just think that it's another tool or it's another toy. And there's definitely a middle ground, even with that thought process, where you just understand that you just have to be cautious in your understanding. You have to investigate, especially within your own field, what is going on, what are the latest trends. Even when the AI wasn't in existence, or at least wasn't as popular as is, right? A year ago, before November 22nd, there were definitely other tools that you should investigate in your field that will enhance your work, either make it faster or make it better. Two, there's definitely tools that are already in use that we don't know use AI in a sense, even in the chat itself. For example, Turnitin uses a form of AI. Now Turnitin has introduced an AI detection element to its sort of module, which is simple enough. So a lot of things are changing very quickly. Right now, we're talking a week from now, we might find that a new educational model has been developed from those base models, and it's going to completely disrupt everything that we've spoken about today. That is how fast things are, in a sense, really moving. And all I have to say is that, stay up to date. Definitely subscribe to the UTLO and our newsletters, and we'll definitely keep researching and keep pushing. And that's all it really is just having a proper form of research and development from our side as the University Teaching and Learning Office, just ensuring that we stay on top of things, whether it's the process or it's the content itself that we create.
Thank you so much, Melikhaya, for that. And thank you for also, marketing the Teaching and Learning Office, because it is important that you stay, in this industry. And when I say industry, it's like the academia. You need to know what's happening there. And we have a lot of resources on our website. If you go to the UTLO website, and even now, the most interesting part is the instructional design team that are currently helping us with, redesigning our modules and our curriculum to ensure they are fit for the 21st century students. So I think now I'm moving on to the next segment, which is the audience poll. I have published the poll, and I would just give it another 2-3 minutes for us to complete this poll, and then I would share the results with you. Well, it's quite interesting. I'm getting interesting feedback. Okay. Once I hit 50 responses, I would end the poll and then share the results, because that's average of the of our population today, and I think that's a very good response rate. So I've got 48, 49. I need one more person. Oh, now I'm on 50. Okay, so I'm gonna end the poll here now. I'm gonna share the result with you so we can all see, based on our own perceptions. Like it's not qualitative, it is quantitative, but it tells us something, at a high level. So I'm gonna share the poll now. So as you can see, I asked, have you used Cortana or Siri before? Yeah, majority said they have used it, and that's where we have 28 respondents saying they've used it, which then shows that you have been using a form of AI. So why are we running? Why are we scared? So I think it's time for us to, if you haven't used it before, it is, well, I think it's fascinating. At times you make mention of a statement and Siri just comes up from nowhere, and you're like, Siri, I didn't ask you to come up. Please go and sleep. And Siri says, okay, thank you, I'm off. you're like, wow, this is interesting. Technology is really making, and it's also it's something like a personal friend, you know, that you can even chat. You can chat with Siri or some of these personal AI assistants. So the next question I asked, I said, do you have a ChatGPT account? Wow, a lot of us we've started, you know, experimenting with ChatGPT, and that's really good to know. For those that do not have ChatGPT accounts, I'm sure that once you live here, you will try to get one, and you know, play around with it, see the possibilities. Yeah. Then the next one I asked, how do you feel about ChatGPT? Wow, the majority of us are excited about it, and this is good to know that 41 out of 51, that's 80%, they are excited. Well, 12% feel scared. Well, and then some the 8% says they are not bothered. Well, let's see. This is, as you had said, this is new. Let's see where this takes us from here. Then I asked also, I said, how often do you use ChatGPT? Not at all. That's okay. The majority of us said not at all, which is 51%. And it kind of contradicts the number of people that said they have started, that they have started like they have an account. So I was expecting more people saying that they've used it, you know. And then looking at 29% said that they've used it sparingly, which means some people are experimenting, or maybe they are even using it for their own work. And then those that use it every day, wow, 20%. Well, maybe I'm one of the 20%, I'm not sure, but I think using it every day, because at times you just want to generate, you know, ideas, or you want to like brainstorm. You know, you can use ChatGPT to kick off your brainstorming session. And then what should be done about ChatGPT? Wow, this is exciting, because I see just 2% says that it should be banned, and then 51% says it must be adopted. 45% says reform assessments. And I think, yeah, we are really thinking deep about this, because it's not about adoption alone, but we have to change, because this is requiring us to change one thing or the other in order for us to adopt it. And then 2% says do nothing. Well, it's quite interesting to see how we you know, our perceptions, or you know, or how we think about ChatGPT. I want to open up the conversation to the audience now. Let me see if we have any message or any questions. Okay, here from an anonymous attendee who says, is there any longitudinal research that has posed the same question to different AI apps over time and has analyzed its level of success at answering the query/request? So, and then there's another question that says, okay, I don't know if anyone wants to answer that. Do you have any idea of any longitudinal research that has, you know, tried to check the success of AI bots like this over the years?
Just to jump in, right now you can actually sort of ask ChatGPT the same question almost every single day, and it will, you know, iterate a better answer. And at the same time, you can actually sort of pre-prompt it, right? So you can ask it to be a specialist in a field, and so forth and so forth. So I understand where that question is definitely going. You're almost trying to create like a double-blind test to just really verify how much better is it going. Maybe there could be other studies that, in a sense, just measure sort of the algorithmic betterness of it, right? The computer scientist will probably say this better, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, but can I just jump in there and yeah, add to that? So I did ask ChatGPT over a few days the same question, but the response that it would give you, it is quite similar, but it would be different. And I think it would be, yeah, it would be quite difficult if I had to give you 3 responses from ChatGPT of the same question. You most probably would think that it's a common knowledge or common topic that was covered in class, and you're just asking, you know, a general question, and the student is responding to that question. But I think that's where the concern comes in, is that, the whole thing about copying and plagiarism, because how do you then detect it? But fortunately, we do have these tools that are out that would be able to detect AI generated text that can be very useful. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. And I think, okay, the second question is covered because it's about more specific about ChatGPT and its, effectiveness in answering the same question. Then there's another question from Bola Lashino, which says, wonderful presentations, colleagues, and I have come across journals such as Nature citing AI tools / boards as authors and co-authors. This is still an ongoing argument, as some journals say yes, while others say no. Shouldn't AI tools such as ChatGPT not be listed in the references of papers published by faculty and assignments by students? Okay, that is strange to me. I don't know if it...
That question is quite interesting. I did come across I can't remember the journal right now, but they've actually put it up on their site that they will not accept any AI tools being referenced in the list. So I think the final decision as to, in terms of student assignments, it would come down to policy in teaching and learning. Do we, in embracing this tool, do we allow students to use the tool? Or do we just, ban the tool from use? And I think part of that also lends itself to the generation of knowledge. So how do you then be able to detect authentic human response, knowledge, as compared to some computer-generated answer? Because remember, at the end of the day, the AI is being trained. So the more information you feed it, there would be some sort of training that's involved in it being better to respond. So maybe that would be something that, in terms of ChatGPT, maybe we need to look into that. How is that done? So yeah.
Jean, do you have something to say about this? Oh, you're muted.
Did you see me smiling or something?
Yes, I saw your reaction, so I'm like, okay.
No, I think it's interesting. It's like, I was just having a conversation with a colleague the other day, right? When we were talking about originality of ideas and knowledge and things. And we're really discussing this idea of whether knowledge is inherently owned by human beings, right? To some degree, right? Like, I think as human beings, we value something. We think there's some value, right? When a human being has created, as opposed to generated by, machine or whatever. But I also remember when I was an art student way back in the day when, we were taking photography on film, right? And, people were saying digital will never achieve what film can do. The heart and process that goes into developing film can't be replicated and something is missing. I don't know what the answer to that is. This is something that we are going to continue to discuss, like what is the nature of knowledge, right? But I would not be surprised if it starts to shift in certain ways, right? I mean, if ChatGPT or AI, whatever, can suddenly get to a point where it is seeing relationships and patterns that we cannot decipher, but those solutions are, helping humanity in ways of like curing cancer or doing this or that. I mean, is that not valuable? So, the whole very issue and topic of what is understanding, what is knowledge, like the nature of it and what does it mean to us, might be very different in the future. I don't know, right? But even like, for example, with art, there was an interesting article about, in art sites, right? Should we allow AI generated art? And some poor artist got banned because they were like, we don't allow AI generated art. And he was like, but that's my original art. It wasn't AI generated. But we have a genre of art now called like AI artists. And kind of like, I would imagine there will be a whole kind of area where we have AI-based engineers, right? The horse whisperer or the AI whisperer. And I always joke around, in the future, maybe AI can write code, but if you look at the salary scale of engineers, you'll still get a bell curve because some people will be able to interface with AI in more interesting, creative, deeper ways to achieve things that are brand new. and some people won't. And, I don't know that that will necessarily change, but it's interesting stuff for sure. What does this all mean? And it comes back down to really fundamental ideas of what we hold.
Thank you so much. So that's all with the Q&A, but I have some of our attendees who have raised their hands. I'm going to allow them to speak, and then we just engage with our. So I'm allowing Mukondi. Mukondi, please, you can unmute and speak.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mukondi.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting discussion, and naturally, I'm obviously excited about the AI. And I think in terms of education, what I think is, and I think a lot of similar points have been made, I think more than anything, it is about a way of thinking. Just like Dr. Jin just said now, that there will be people who will do exceptional things using AI and others who won't necessarily do that. And I think it's about a way of thinking. It's the same way that I view entrepreneurship. I think, it's a way of thinking that, I don't know if it's developed or if it's inherent or whatever, but I think it's all about, how we think about things. I mean, for example, I think about, in terms of education, for example. So if you look at, for example, something like the threshold concept, which talks about learning as in different disciplines, you get core concepts there that can sort of open a gateway in terms of students' understanding. How can you use that, as it relates to the ChatGPT, for example? So could you use it to sort of help you target certain core concepts that or provides an opportunity for deep learning where students can get into deep inquiry about certain aspects that they struggle with understanding. And then from there, you are moving from that place of the what and going more towards the how, which I think is the most interesting place for learning to happen, And so students no longer are just telling you, this is the fact as it relates to this concept, this is thermodynamics, but what is thermodynamics at a deeper level, for example, So I think it's really just about a way of thinking. So lastly, more to Dr. Jin, and thinking in terms of, this community of practice around all of these things, I was thinking it would be very beneficial, I don't know, Dr. Jin, if you have maybe some sort of network of scholars, academics, practitioners, that you sort of engage with internationally, because I was thinking it could be beneficial, maybe as us as the instructional design to, these people that we continue engaging with, especially people internationally, So we are also able to keep comparing where we are in our development as it relates to other places, So yeah, I'm also interested to hear.
Thank you, Mukondi. Just for the interest of time, we have other people also that will need to make their contribution. Thank you for that. Does anyone want to respond to that, or do you have anything to say? Dr. Jean, I see you smiling.
I'm always smiling. I'm a happy guy. What can I say? Right?
Okay, that's cool.
No, but it's really great to hear the audience being very thoughtful about it and thinking about the kinds of ideas that were proposed today in the contexts, right, that they are actively involved in and learning. I am not a thermodynamics engineer, right? So my domain knowledge of that is very limited, but things you're saying, I absolutely see in problem solving, for example, ways of thinking. And I also add ways of seeing, right? So, for example, in problem solving, we often, people who are brand new or not quite versed in the domain, they'll look at things and see problems at the surface level, right? What does it mean to see something at a deeper level and see the pattern? Well, that's kind of what ChatGPT and these AIs can also do and help with, right? And so, that might be something of a really interesting space, right? In physics and engineering, to kind of help people see and think in the ways engineers are. One concept that I'll quickly bring up as well is this idea that, to be a scientist, to be an engineer, it isn't just about the domain knowledge of thermodynamics, right? I often talk to my students in my social media class as there is not just thinking about, but also thinking to be. What does it mean to be a scientist, right? It's not just memorizing equation, but it's the way we talk, the way we collaborate, the way we exchange ideas, and the way we're doing now. I think there's a lot of potential, right, for those kinds of things as well to come up. And so, connections are infinite. And, it's just going to be really exciting for us to work internationally, nationally with each other to see different perspectives. As we go in. So I am absolutely delighted to, see what other people are up to, and it shouldn't be hard to find me. So.
Okay, thanks. So I will allow Asad to speak now. Please unmute.
Thanks, Badru. I just want to thank the panelists for a really nice discussion. I just want to ask a very quick question to any of the panelists about what their thoughts are on how much we put this at the forefront of students' minds in our classroom. So like Dr. Jin made a really nice point about first starts with us playing around with the tool, seeing particularly how we can use it in our particular use cases. So there's like sort of the one thing where we just adapt our assessments we check plagiarism, we behind the scenes make our design stuff with the ChatGPT, or it's in the classroom, we actively like bringing up ChatGPT now, we discussing it with students, we pointing them towards it. So I just wanted, obviously there's not a clear answer here, but I just wanted the panelists' thoughts on like how they plan on like putting it at the forefront of students' minds and to what level and how that would develop. I guess that would develop as we get more comfortable with the tool ourselves. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Asad. We have a very few minutes left, but I would just want one of you to respond to that. Maybe Reggie?
Okay, Badru, thanks for that. Asad raised an interesting question, and I think it comes down to each of us on an individual level. I certainly wouldn't want to kind of introduce something that I'm not comfortable with as a teacher in the class, But I think I would start off by certainly making my students aware that we know that this exists, because if you're going to just show like ignorance of it, then we're going down a very dangerous path. So I think it's important for us to just make students, hey, you know what, we know about this, so they are kind of aware, and then let's look at the developments. I think the awareness of it and looking at around the developments, like we've got the AI text detectors that are out. So trying to use such tools for our own use as teachers, as teaching staff first, and then kind of integrate it into the learning aspect. I think that would be my approach to it, but just don't ignore it. Definitely.
Okay, I'm going to take the last comment, which is from Saba. I'm going to allow Saba to speak now.
Oh, Badru, thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to appreciate this program. It's quite thoughtful of the university and the organizers. So briefly, I want to make some comments. The first one is the fact that ChatGPT is here with us and there's nothing we can do. There's pretty nothing we can do about it at the moment. We just have to live with it. So I have seen some feedbacks from some people who use ChatGPT, and the conclusion was that at times it gives some wrong answers, and that is why it should not be taken hook, line, and sinker. So, and that supports the idea of one of the speakers about the fact that it has to be integrated with your own knowledge. You don't just rely 100% on the output of ChatGPT, and that is why we should critique whatever is coming from there. Then also, I must say this: one of the professors, a professor in US, actually made a suggestion regarding using ChatGPT for learning process. He gave a scenario whereby a teacher will ask students to get responses from ChatGPT, but going forward, he asks them to also critique the responses they get from the AI tool, to critique it in order to see their understanding of what is coming from there. And this can be another way of exploring knowledge of the students and making them learn more from this AI tool. And finally, I'm looking at the anti-ChatGPT, like a GPT-0 that was displayed just now. I don't know to what extent that will be effective, But I also saw on the chat box here, where somebody posted an update from Turnitin that they are now launching AI detectors. And so I don't know how well this works, but I feel, because recently a friend of mine asked ChatGPT that does it plagiarize? And ChatGPT said, no, it doesn't plagiarize, that as much as possible, it tries to generate a unique response. So we will see. We are waiting to see what will come out of the various efforts to kind of detect the integrity of people from.
Thank you so much for that. That's quite interesting, and I must say that just to add on to what you've just said now, I remember a colleague of mine in the office. He told me, he said he asked ChatGPT to write a piece for him and he should give him references. And then he said he wanted to make some corrections in the references, and he copied the references and put it online. He couldn't see the paper, so it means ChatGPT was making up the references also, and that's quite, it's just going to mislead people. I know we are up time, but I'm just going to give the last person, because I know his hand has been up since. Prof. Samuel, I will give you the opportunity to. Oh, he dropped his hand. Okay, that's fine. So thank you, everyone. And I think this has really been informative. And I know it's been useful for everyone, because we started this conversation with over 100 attendees, and we are currently sitting at 76, which shows you the interest in which which we have in this. And this is not going to be the end of it. We are still going to have more discussions around ChatGPT. We're expecting one of our students who is working at KPMG. They have said they will come in also to engage with us about how ChatGPT is changing the industry. And I think I am really looking forward to that, because it gives us another view. It gives us another perspective from a different domain entirely, because we need to know what's happening out there too. Because those people, what are they doing? They are pushing technology to us. They are making us to change, but how can we, adopt this and move? Thank you so much, Dr. Jean. Thank you so much, Dr. Reggie. Thank you, Melikhaya. Thank you, Dr. Upasana. Thank you to all our team, our UTLO team who has made this possible. I do appreciate every one of you. And thank you to our attendees, our audience. It's really been very interesting, and it was a thought-provoking engagement. So from here, I think we are going to draw the curtain, and then please, you all enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.